Hi everyone, Dan back here again with you with another video. A little while back I did a video on issues with the Ford F-150s, particularly the 11s to the 14s. I have a 2011 crew cab Lariat two-wheel drive with a 5.0 engine in it. And so I did a little video that kind of talked about some of the known issues if you're in the market for a used F-150, some of the known issues to look at. So this past weekend, I decided to fix one of those known issues that I've been having with my truck. And if those of you that watched the other video, you'll know it's this heater blend door actuator motor. It's a big issue with these trucks. Mine has a dual zone climate control system, so there's two of them, one up on top and one on the bottom behind the dash. This is actually a bad one that I took out from the top when I swapped the top out, and so this weekend I tackled the bottom one. The top one, not extremely difficult. Kind of getting your fingers up in there was a little bit of a pain, but it's about an hour and a half, 2 hour job. The bottom one, much more difficult task. That being said, I would like to give a shout out to Ford Tech Makaloko. I hope I pronounced that right. I subscribe to his page. He does a lot of really great videos for Fords, particularly a lot of Ford truck videos. That's where I got the inspiration to do this video. I watched his video. He calls it his hack method. I watched his video, got a lot of really good tips, and decided to tackle this job myself. I'm glad I did. I saved myself a lot of money. For those of you that don't know, to change this part out, because of where it is, the official Ford fix is they pull the whole dash out. They drain the AC system. They have to recharge the AC system to get this part out. This is I went to my Ford dealer and got a replacement part. It's a $25 part. They're going to charge you probably 8 hours labor to do the job. You're talking close to $1,000 just to replace a $25 part. That being said, this method is, like he calls it, it's kind of a hack method. You're doing it without taking the dash out, and you'll see in my video that there are a few things that I do that no Ford dealership or no mechanic is probably going to do. So that's my disclaimer about this video starting off. I'm going to tell you right now, he calls it the hack method. I'm telling you right now, this is my hack method. If I were a tech and I were doing this to somebody else's vehicle, I would probably go the official way and do it, pull the dash out. But I just did not feel comfortable pulling the whole dash out of my truck. I think there's a lot more stuff that I could get in there and screw up. This method was minimally invasive as far as disconnecting things, so I just felt more comfortable doing it. I had to make a few little alterations to get into the part and get it out. You'll see those in the video. But I'm comfortable with that. It's my truck. It's paid for. I'm totally fine with it. I've driven this truck for the past 2 days after I've done the job, and it's working great, and I'm very happy with it, and I'm glad I went this route. So, all that being said, in Ford Tech Makaloko's video, he starts off and shows you how to get up in there and get to the part, and then he kind of cuts off and says, hey, I swapped it out and got everything buttoned back up. And I noticed in the comments there are a lot of questions concerning particular models of truck and, well, how did you get it back up in there? My truck's a little different. The video he did was a center console, a flow-through console truck. My truck doesn't have that. My truck has the jump seat, so I don't have the flow-through center console. So what I decided to do is I just wanted to make a video that was a little more thorough from start to finish. His video was a great place to start, and I'm very appreciative of that video. But what I did is I went into the comments section of his video and I read all the comments probably 3 or 4 times and just kind of took notes and documented. People put some great tips in the comments of his video because a lot of people have done this, and there were a lot of great tips in the comments section. So what I decided to do was to create this video and try to incorporate everything into this one video. So the video is a little bit lengthy, but it's very thorough. I feel it's very thorough. I try not to leave any steps out, and I tried to stop and show everything as I go. And with that being said, it's a raw video. I shot this video on my phone. I shot it in little clips. I'm editing it in iMovie. This is not a professional video. It's not meant to be a video. I'm more concerned with the substance of the video. So if it gets a little lengthy for you, you can skip through it to the parts you need. And I feel like I covered everything that I saw questions about in the comments section of his video, and I incorporated some of the tips. So watch the video, watch the parts that you need. You can skip through it. That's the beauty of a YouTube video. You can skip through it to get to the parts that you need. But I hope that this video is helpful for some people who are trying to get out there and who are trying to do their own work on their truck and save themselves some money. It is a lot of work. Total work time probably took me about 4 to 5 hours. I did take a lot of breaks. I had to stop to go get another part, food, you know, all that kind of nonsense. So it took me, I got to a certain point where I pulled everything out and realized that the replacement part that I bought wouldn't fit. So I had to wait. It was too late that night. I had to wait till the next morning to go to the Ford dealership to get the OEM part. And you'll see that in the video, but just kind of a heads up. Before you start this job, I highly recommend, if you're going to use this process, I highly recommend going and getting the OEM part. This is, like I said, this is the bad one that I took out. The OEM one looks exactly like it. It's a Ford part number for, I have a 2011, so check your part numbers and stuff. I have a 2011. It's a YH1933. Okay, and that's the part that fits. I know it fits. I put it back in my truck. It works fine. What I did originally is I bought this Dorman aftermarket part because someone had mentioned it. It's got a lifetime warranty on it. The Ford part's only got a 2-year warranty, so maybe this is a better built part. However, I'm going to tell you right now, and you'll see later in the video, this part I could not get back into the truck using this method. I just could not get it to fit. So I would highly recommend just go and get the Ford part. It'll slip right back in there, and it's going to save you a lot of frustration. So I need to take this one back, and this is the bad one. But anyway, so those are a few things about the video. Like I said, it's a crude video. My videography is not the best, but I left it in the raw form and just clipped it all together because I want you to see the process as I experienced it and to see the steps that I went through and kind of the challenges that I experienced as I did the job. So I hope this video is helpful to you guys. Please give me some comments if you try to take this. If you have questions, I'll try my best to answer all the questions. Like the video, so maybe it'll get out there and it'll pick up some more views. I'm not as much a person, I'm not out looking for subscribers, but YouTube has been very helpful to me in situations like this, and so I'm just trying to pay it forward. So if this helps you, throw some comments out there and, you know, share the video with people because, you know, I tried to be as thorough as possible, and I think I did a pretty good job of explaining step by step. If I didn't, if you have questions, ask the questions and I'll do my best to answer. Okay, thanks. So we'll move right on into the process and enjoy the video. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, so here's where we're at now. This is the first step in the process, kind of going according to some of the stuff that I've read. As you can see here, this is my passenger side, and I have removed the seat bolts and I've slid the seat back. If you'll notice, I didn't disconnect these connectors. I didn't really feel that was necessary. I don't need to take the seats all the way out, at least I don't think at this point. You're probably asking, why the heck am I taking seats out to fix something under the dash? Well, see this right here? These are the under seat vents. This tube runs under the carpet, curves up here, goes up to the center, and then joins up. Let me get you a better light here. And it joins up right there with this piece that connects coming in there. Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but anyway, and so in order to get that piece out, I have to be able to unhook. Apparently this thing is attached somewhere under here, these vents. So I had to pull those out. So had to back the seats out. Really not a difficult job, just takes a couple of minutes. If you have an impact wrench, that would make a huge difference. I don't have an impact wrench. I was just using a regular old ratchet. The bolts, the rear bolts, I did mark the bolts because the rear bolts are a whole lot longer, so I just marked them. I mean, obviously I know which ones are the rear bolts, but they are rusty because they go through the floor pan, so they might be a little bit hard to break loose. So what I did is I basically just went up under the truck and sprayed a little WD-40 under them, or on them, and just let them sit for a minute, and then I was able to break them loose pretty good. Didn't really even need a breaker bar, just used a long armed ratchet. The other thing is, this is a good opportunity to get all the crap off your carpet. I got these seats back, and of course there was just a couple years worth of trash and stuff that I couldn't reach, so it was a good opportunity to get that. The other thing too is I just pulled up this little trim piece here. Hang on, I'll show you. This little piece that goes right here. Okay, it just pulls straight up. You can see where they've got these connectors that just pop down in there. And I'll be honest with you, you have to pry on them pretty good, but you just got to be careful. Try to pull them straight up. Some of these kind of stretched them a little bit because I was pulling, kind of pulling from the sides. So try to come at them on both sides. Put your hand on both sides and try to lift straight up. They're in there pretty good. But if you sit here and pry like this, you risk bending them. The plastic actually kind of stretches, and that's what this one did. One on the other side did the same thing. So just kind of go easy on them. Everything with this job is really, honestly, I think it's going to be a lot of patience. So anyway, that's where we are now. That's kind of the beginning of this. And the reason that like I said, I had to pull this seat and I pulled the driver's seat back is now I have to pull all this carpet. I have to pull all this carpet back so I can get to these ducts. So I'll take another video when they get the carpet pulled back and get the duct out and let you know how that goes. All right, this is the underfloor ductwork that I was working to get out. This is why I had to back off of back the seats out. This hooks up to the front going in, actually coming out of the blower in the bottom. This goes over the hump, and then these go under the seats. The only thing that's holding them under the seats is they got two of those little plastic things you punch through, and it's got the little screw that holds it in. There's one of those on each side. So you have to pull that carpet back, and you have to get up under the seat to get those two out. I was trying to avoid taking my center console out. I don't have the flow-through console. I've got the jump seat console. It's back here under all this carpet. And it was kind of a pain getting that duct worked out, but I managed to wiggle it out without having to take the center console out. I'm trying to do as little removing stuff as I can. All right, so here's where we're at now. If you see under here, I just took this brace off. This brace goes here. It's got 4 8mm bolts holding it in. And now we're starting to get to the meat and the bones. This is where the floor duct work connects right here. It butts up there, it splits over the hump here. Let me get my flashlight. You can start to see where this part is. Let me see. Because the next thing I gotta do is I gotta start getting some pieces out of the way, some duct work. This screw right here that's holding this ductwork in, I've got to take it out. I've got to take as many of these screws holding the ductwork in, because the idea is to get something under this, pry this ductwork down to be able to drop this actuator out. And I'm trying to wiggle around where I can get to this actuator and show you where it is. It is still pretty hard to see. It's behind this little post right here, actually. Let me see. Yeah. I'm trying to get my light up in there. This is a really kind of a tight space to work, but it's back up in here behind this post. That's why I got to get all this stuff out of the way. This may be a better shot. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I got to get these. In fact, you can see, I think this is one of the screws for it right here. It's hard working this light and camera and everything else up under here. It's such a tight space, but I think that's one of the screws right there that I'm looking at that I've got to get out. I think that's the one that's holding it into the bottom of the air conditioning. But you can see it up in there just a little bit. It's just this little, I think this is it right here. I'm pretty sure this is it. Okay, so obviously, you got, and there's an electrical connection on the back of it. So I've got to get all this ductwork, try to pull this ductwork down so I can at least somehow get back up in there and unhook that electrical connection. So, all right, well, we'll keep pulling stuff apart and I'll keep it updated. Okay, here we are. This is what I've spent about probably 2 hours trying to get set up for. Honestly, the prep time for this job has turned out to be more than anything. Okay, as you can see, I have a pry bar propped up. So what I did is I went in here and I took these support pieces for this ductwork, this bottom duct. There's one right here. There's a screw, an 8mm screw that holds this duct onto the whole system here. This is the bottom of the AC box right here. Okay. All right, and you see I pried this thing down probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch. That screw right there, I'm trying to work the light and everything. This screw right here is one of the screws for this actuator. Now the problem that I'm seeing right here, and a lot of people had this issue, and a lot of people said this, is this piece right here is right in front of it. So getting it out is going to be a bit of a trick. Let me get this cable out of the way. So this is it. There's the actuator right there. I know this is not the best video, but so this is the piece right here. So you've got two screws holding it on. You got the one I just pointed to right here. This is on the passenger side, and this is the ductwork. You see I have this ductwork pried down and pushed out of the way, so I can easily get a small box wrench. This is an 8mm screw, so I can easily get my box wrench in here. In the very back here, it's hard to see, but there's a little slot. You see a little tab sticking down? That little tab goes into the hole in the back of the actuator, so it just holds it in place. It's just a little tab. So there's no screw back there. There's this screw up front, and then there's another one on the driver's side. I'm going to walk around and show you that one. Bear with me a second here. All right. Same thing I did over here too. There was a couple of mounting screws. There was one right here. See where my light is? Oh, there it is. Okay, there was one right here, and then there was one back here. I don't know if I needed to take it out, but I took it out anyway. And so this is on the driver's side now. Okay, so here's where we're at on the driver's side. This screw that I'm shining my light on is the one that everybody's having problems with. Most people have had to break that tab off to get the screw out. And you can see part of the reason why. See this little thing standing up right here in the way? All right, let me try to get my... See this right here? This thing, as far as I can tell, serves no purpose. It's not connected to anything. It's connected to the top of the duct, but there's no screw hole in the top, and it doesn't connect anything at the top. The only thing that I can think is that maybe it's kind of serves as a wedge to hold this actuator in place. All right? But it obviously prevents you being able to get to that screw. And who knows, maybe that's Ford's way of trying to get you from messing with that screw. But what I'm going to do, and I've had a couple people recommended this on the videos that I've watched, is just take a hacksaw blade and I'm going to cut this thing off. I don't think that it's going to have any bearing on anything that I do. I mean, the only thing I can see is since I've wedged it may brace up against the top when I take the tension off the duct. It probably braces up against the top of there just to provide a little bit more support. But honestly, I don't think it's going to cause any problems if I take this out. So I'm going to take a hacksaw blade. I'm going to cut this off. But this is the piece that I'm working towards right here. And you can see that little white piece in the middle? That's that spline that goes up into the blend door. And that's why you have to drop this thing down, because you got to get that spline out. That thing has to drop out. The other issue, I think, is going to be the next fun part when I get to it, is in the back is the electrical connection. So we'll get to that when we get there. But right now I think I'm going to cut this tab off and see how that works. All right, there we go. All right, so I ended up cutting that piece off that I said I was going to cut off. Let me see if you can see right here. You can see where I cut it off. It left a little hole. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'll probably just either use some type of duct tape, or I might actually super glue that little piece back on. Either way, not a big deal. I'm not concerned about that. I did manage to get that screw out. I was pretty excited about that. It was a big pain in the butt though. So here's the problem I have now. as you can see, the light just rolled off. As you can see right here, the actuator dropped right out of the hole. See, that's it. See the little spline part right there? That's it. Okay, so it dropped out of the hole. The problem is, there's a lip over here on this side, and I cannot, even after I cut that, I know this video is probably not going to be that great, but even after I cut that little piece out, I can't get this over the lip. It's still, there's just not enough room to lift this thing up. It's like just enough where I can't get it up over this lip. So I may have to, I'm going to try to pry down on the other side, but the actuator's out. Sorry, my camera work is not good in this. I still have to get back in the back here to the connector, but I'm hoping if I can wiggle this thing out of this hole, I should be able to reach my hand or fingers, or, you know, get my wife to, or son to get back in there and get that connector out. But I did get the screws out. I do have this thing out. It's dropped, it's loose. Now I just got to figure out how I'm going to get this thing wiggled loose, and that's the next project. But I think I'm going to take a break. Getting those screws out was a little bit of a chore. So I'm going to take a break and come back and figure out what I'm going to do next. I may, and some people have done this, some of the comments, this post right here that the ductwork is screwed into, like here, some people have talked about you have to cut that post off. Cut that post off, you pull the actuator out, and then you super glue or reattach the post somehow. And honestly, I don't even think it's necessary. There's so much stuff up under here, and this thing is pretty tight, especially with the screws on the other side. Honestly, I think I could just wedge something under this duct and keep it pressed up against the bottom of the air conditioning unit, and I don't even think this screw would be necessary. So we'll see. I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to debate on whether I'm going to cut this out, but that's where we're at so far. Well, here it is. I managed to get the actuator out, actuator motor out, finally. Yeah, I'll show you the hole that it came out of. This connector right here, that's the connector that's hooked up to the back of it. Once I wiggled it out of this slot, and oh, by the way, I ended up cutting that post off. I just didn't see a way to get that post. I could not wiggle the actuator motor assembly out without getting that post out. So I'll figure out something. I'm either gonna super glue it back, or I may just wedge something under the, ductwork, because honestly, all this post does is hold the ductwork up. If I put something under the ductwork and just wedge it up under there, it's serving the same purpose. So, but anyway, there's the connector. One thing to note on this connector is it's got a lock on it. On the back of it, it's got a little red clip that you have to push back towards the front of the truck, and then it has a little squeeze, the little squeeze clip that you have to squeeze and then pull out. Once you get the actuator out, I had enough slack, not a lot. I couldn't get it all the way out. I had to kind of wiggle my fingers up here. But once you get the actuator wiggled free from this area right here, I was able to get my fingers back there. I used a little cat's claw hook, and I pushed the lock. I pushed the lock out, and then I managed to get my fingers in there and squeeze it and pull it out. The challenge, I think, is going to be getting the new one in there and getting it pushed back in there, getting enough force to push it back in there. But anyway, okay, so a little bit of a victory there, getting it out, and I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to tackle getting the new one back in. And once I get this new one wiggled back in there, it's just buttoning everything back up. So, all right. Okay, so what I did is I took, this is the bad actuator motor, and just wanted to show, you know, people who are curious about it, what's going on here. But if you look right here, the reason this thing's making a clicking noise, if you look right here on this gear, you'll see there's a tooth knocked out of it. See that? Okay. So what's happening is when you turn your truck on and it's trying to calibrate, this is your, on the back side, there's the little spline that goes up into the actuator door. All right.
that this gear, this motor, starts to turn, turns this gear, turns this other gear down here, which turns this gear, which is trying to turn the spline to adjust the door. Well, the problem is over time, these gears start to get worn down and even break. And see, this one's broken. You can see where that one's broke out. But also you can see where they're kind of worn down. There's a lot of grease on it, but you can also see where they're kind of worn down. Look, if you look up in there, sorry, look, you can see that's worn. A big chunk of that's just worn flat where it's just been grinding. So that's the problem. That's the clicking that you're hearing when you start the truck. It's those gears click, 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 trying to catch. And then eventually they'll catch at first. And then after a while, what mine started doing is it just would not catch. And see, it broke that one. And then some of these others are just worn down. So anyway, that's the inside of this actuator motor. And I think that's the problem. I mean, these plastic gears, I'm sure they only last for so long. And unfortunately, they are a real pain to get to. So well, there you go. That's what it is. That's where your clicking's coming from. If you're getting the clicking, if it's not working, that's exactly what it is. And you can see right here, I turned it. You can see the chunk missing out of it. Let me get this. I'm trying to do this one-handed. See that big chunk taken out of it? And those gears are just get worn down. So, all right, and we just got to get the new one in. Okay, this is day 2 of this project. I would have had it finished last night, except I ran into a little bit of a problem. The problem is this piece right here. This is the bad part. This is the OEM Ford part that came out of the truck. And at the beginning of the video, I talked about how I got this Dorman part. I think that's what it is. Yeah, it's the Dorman part. So after I got this piece out, trying to get this Dorman part in, and I ran into a bit of a problem. The problem is this Dorman part is thicker, the case is thicker than the OEM part. And I'm going to put the two of them next to each other and let you see the difference. Maybe a little hard to tell in this video, the lighting's not that great, but you can see right here, the Dorman part is about probably 1/4 of an inch or so thicker. The reason being, the OEM part has this little hump on the bottom right here, and then the case gets narrower. The Dorman part, the case is the whole, there's no hump, okay? Which, that's all fine and dandy, but the problem is if you're using this method to replace this piece, it's hard enough to get this piece out as is, but this Dorman part, no matter how hard I tried, I could not get this thing back in. And I think that 1/4 of an inch made all the difference in the world. I could not get this replacement part back into the slot that this OEM part came out of. So at the beginning of the video, you know, I said use the Dorman part. I wanted to use the Dorman part. This part, the Dorman part, has a lifetime warranty on it. And the OEM part has a 2-year warranty on it. I suspect, or was hoping, that this Dorman part was going to be a little bit better part and it was going to last me longer, because I really don't want to do this again. But I know there are people that made comments in one of the videos I looked at that said they used the Dorman part, but I could not get the Dorman part back in. I have the ductwork pushed down as low as I can physically get it. This part came out fairly easily, the OEM part. I can slip the OEM part back in there fairly easy, but I just physically could not wiggle this thing any way to get it back in. So what I ended up having to do yesterday, I ended up having to take a break, and I had to go to the Ford dealership this morning and get the OEM part. And so that's what I did. I got it's a YH1933 is the part number. And it's exactly like the one I pulled out. It's got the little hump. It's got the narrower case. So I think that this one's gonna go back in. I'm hoping that this one's gonna go back in easier. I know I got the OEM part out fairly easy, so I'm hoping that this one's gonna go back in. So that's where we stand now. So I'm gonna go and try to get this new part back in and hopefully be able to get finished up here. Okay, so another tip here as far as installing the new part. When you take the old part out, depending on where your system, your heating and air conditioning system was set, this spline here, this little drive piece, may be turned in a different direction. This is the new piece, and you can see there's a piece missing on the shaft. Okay, so it goes up into the box under the air conditioner. It'll only go one way. It's got this slot right here that has to go in there. The new part comes with it facing to, see the connector here points to the front of the truck. So when you put it back in there, and you can't turn this thing, okay, these gears in there are set. So when you put it back in, you have to have this thing lined up with the receiving end, the female side that goes up into the bottom of the air condition. When I pull mine out, it was, this open gap was facing to about the 10 o'clock position. So if I were to try to push this in the place that it's going to fit, just jam it up in there, it's not going to match up. I would have to turn this box to get it to match up. Well, the problem is you don't really have enough space to wiggle this box around in there to get it to fit. So one of the comments that I had read was to take apart the old one, and that's what I did. I took apart the old one, and so now I have this gear with the little spline missing, and all I did was I came up here where it goes, and we got to do a little more wiggling with the camera here, but I came up here where it goes. And so all you have to do is you just take it and stick the old piece. This goes right up in there, and then you can turn this gear to get it to where it's going to be facing forward. Now you kind of have to estimate it. What you can do is you can mark the back of this gear right here. You could say mark it somehow where you can see it. But what I did is I knew mine was at the 10 o'clock position, so I turned it clockwise just a little bit, and I think I'm pretty close. I'm close enough that I think when I get the new piece in there, it's gonna line up pretty close. I may have just a slight wiggle to it, but you know, some of them you may be pretty far off. So I would recommend take your old one apart and get this piece, and then you can stick it up into the slot, and you can rotate that blend door to the point where you need it, okay? And that's kind of a quick and easy way to wiggle it into the right place. The other thing that people suggested is they were just holding this part. They were just kind of holding this part up under that hole with some pressure on it, and then they were starting the truck up and letting it go through its calibration sequence, and then eventually that piece would turn, and it would, it would match up and slip up in there. I think this is a pretty easy way to get started, though, is to take this piece and manually turn it to where it's pretty dang close, and then maybe you can do that, that other method. But I think I'm going to be able to get it up in there, so we'll see. All right, here we are. The part is back in. As you can see, this is the elusive. That screw right there, that's the one that everybody has issues with trying to get it back in. I did get it back in with a small 8mm box wrench. However, as I showed earlier in the video, I had to cut this. There was a piece right here. I had to cut that piece off. I cut that piece off. I wasn't real concerned about it. However, I will say when I cut it off, I cut a small hole in this piece of ductwork. So yeah, in keeping with the tradition of this being kind of a redneck hacky job, I just put some duct tape over the hole. I'm not too worried about that, honestly.
I got a piece of duct tape securing it, and it just goes out to this blower here. So if any air leaks out, it's just going to leak out into the floor, which this is the floor duct anyway. All right, so I got this screw here, and then the other one, if I can get it around here, the other one's right over here. That was the easy one to get in. Surprisingly, I had enough cable wiring that when it went to put the when I went to connect the connector in the back, basically what I did is I was able to reach around with 2 fingers like so. I grabbed the connector between my 2 fingers, pinched it between my 2 fingers, and I was able to kind of work it back in there, and just it snapped right back into the back of the actuator motor. So that was actually not too bad. I had enough room to work that I actually snapped the cable in, or the wiring harness in, before I even put this back into place, and it just slipped right in there. And I'll tell you, the little trick that I mentioned earlier of taking the old shaft and sticking it up in there and turning the actuator, the door, to where it's facing the 12 o'clock position, man, that little tip worked golden for me, because once I connected the wire and I slid the actuator box up in there, and I pushed the spline up into the hole here, man, it slipped right in there, and it was in the perfect position to where these holes lined up. I had no problem with it. So that was an awesome tip. I'll have to give credit. I'll have to go back and look whoever gave credit to that. But man, talk about perfect, man. This box just slid right up in there. The shaft went right up into the hole. I got both of these screws in. So man, it was perfect. All right, so here comes the big test. I just put the fuse back in. I had to pull the fuse last night. Here we go. Here's the scary part. Let me start the truck. Oh, let's see. Hang on. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna turn the key into the on position. And you're gonna hear it ding for a minute. All right. All right, and here we go. Turn it into the... Sorry, that was the accessory position. I'm gonna turn it into the on position. Now it should go through the calibration process. I know I just heard the one up by the gas pedal go through its calibration. Okay, normally if you have this problem, you would hear clicking by now. I'm gonna go ahead and start the truck. All right, so it started up. Okay, so normally I would have heard clicking by now. So what I'm gonna do, I turn the system on, because if you have this problem, it doesn't matter if you have the AC on or off, at least when I was having the issue, because it goes through the calibration at the beginning, whether the AC or heater is on or off. So I just turned the AC on. I'm gonna cycle it through. I'm gonna cycle it through a little bit of a temperature change here. Let's go to, all right, so I've got the climate. I'm gonna cycle through here. So this should make the actuator move. All right, so I've got it on 65. It's blowing nice cool air. I'm gonna turn it down to the floor. It's kicking out of the floor, nice and cold. All right, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna crank it back, warm it up, which should make that blend door turn. And this is where a lot of people start getting the issue of the clicking. Okay, I just turned it back up to the vents. Okay, instantly I'm feeling warm air coming out of the vents. Yep. So I went from cold to nice. It's blowing nice warm air out of it. All right. So you know what? I'm gonna call that success. No clicking, no noises coming out of that actuator. Everything's blowing nice and warm now. And I transitioned from 65 degrees to 79 degrees. So that actuator door is doing its job, it's moving. And that's it. I think we got her fixed. Okay, so now I just got to get it all buttoned up, and then I'll kind of conclude the video, and I'll throw in a few tips there. All right, so I got the screws back in the other side that hold the ductwork. There's one over here, and there's one on the back side on the driver's side. I'm on the passenger side now. Now this is where I cut that piece off right here in order to get to the actuator motor. So I cut that piece off, and that piece came down here, and there's a hole here on the duct, and there was a screw that kind of secured the ductwork on the passenger side. Now with the other screws in on the driver's side, you can see there's a little bit of flex here. Part of it is I had this thing like pressure down on this thing all night. I had it, you know, with the wedge, so it's kind of in that position. But if I put that screw in there and screwed it on, this is what we're talking. It would raise it up about a half an inch or so. Now this thing's pretty solid as it is. So I'm thinking that I'm not really concerned about I'm not gonna super glue this thing back in for sure. The only thing I was thinking about maybe doing is putting something under here just to wedge this. But honestly, once I get these underfloor vents, once I slip that piece up in there, I think it's gonna kind of wedge it a little bit too. And I really don't think there's enough wiggle in here that it's gonna be an issue. I mean, this thing is in here solid, this ductwork. So I honestly think I'm just gonna leave it as it is. I don't think it's gonna be a problem. If I drive it for a while and it starts rattling or starts moving, or I feel like it's an issue, I can easily just put something up under here, wedge it, or I was thinking I can somehow secure it through this hole to here, maybe wire it or something like that. But honestly, there's just a little bit of play in it, and I don't think it's really gonna be an issue. So I'm gonna try to get this flooring duct back in, get these braces back in, and get this all finished up.